Hour. We're back, and thank you for joining us. Go to parkerdk.com and give us a call here today. We're live, 651-289-4488. We're joined now by Republican congressional candidate Pete Stauber for the 8th Congressional District in the state of Minnesota, a district that has been held for virtually all of the past 50 years by Democrats, not entirely, but almost. And I, for one, think the Republicans have a very good shot with this candidate running. He's outstanding and meets and matches this district particularly well. Pete Stauber, 21-plus years of service as a police officer up in the 8th and St. Louis County Commissioner and chair of the county board for a number of years, receiving upwards of 70+% of the vote for those for his county commissioner seat. And I'll tell you, he not only has a great story to tell and has outstanding foundational principles, but he understands politics and policy, and you're going to hear that right now. Pete, how are you today?
Good morning, Andy, my friend. How are you doing?
Doing very well. Thank you for joining us again, your second visit to the Justice Hour, and very much appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you having me, Andy. And by the way, I do really like your music.
Oh, thank you. I've got to say, we don't do classical very often, but when we do, we take the foundational best elements of that genre, and we play them here on the Justice Hour. Pete, I want to turn our attention to perhaps the central policy issue of the week and of the last several months in part, and that is gun control and the hue and cry for gun control in the wake of the terrible killings down in Florida of the past week. What are your thoughts regarding stemming these mass murders that have been occurring, not just in schools but beyond, but certainly in schools?
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate situation. And when I was still in my law enforcement career, I served 23 years in law enforcement. And if you remember, I think it was 1999, that Columbine shooting happened. And we in the law enforcement community really struggled on what we need to do and how, as law enforcement officers, we need to respond to this. And really the response from the law enforcement has really become focused on getting there quick, not getting a lot of people surrounding the school. You get to one or two officers in there and you go to the sound of shots. And that's historically not what you do in law enforcement. Usually you have your time on your side, but we know that in a shooting like this, time is not on our side. Time means injuries or death. And so the topic for us for the last, 18, 19 years of my career, that the school shootings, and we practice school shootings. I was on our tactical response team, and I led a patrol group for several years. And it's one of the calls you don't ever want to get to. And unfortunately, that when these happens, when a tragedy like this happens, Andy, people try to politicize it. And what I want to do is, first of all, I want to pray for the families that they get through this, because I can't imagine it. And then we need to look at how can we best stop them, because the best case law enforcement is 2 or 3, 4, 5 minutes away, and the carnage can be great in that amount of time. And so I look at for me, Andy, I look at a couple of things. It starts really with the family, right? The respect for life, the respect for the firearm, because as a law enforcement officer, Andy, I was never afraid of a law-abiding citizen having a firearm. What we are concerned about, in this case in Parkland, Florida, Andy, what I'm hearing and the information I've received, not only on the radio but the television and print media, is that the FBI was notified about the behavior.
Nearly 3 dozen times it was reported. I don't know all of those. I think it was 20 or so through law enforcement of the FBI. But many more even to other authorities, and all of those calls went unheeded.
Yeah, the thoughts, the saying that we hear and see all the time is, if you see something, say something. In that case, they saw something and heard something and did report it, and they said something to the authorities. And I would guess there's going to be some real scrutiny on the FBI and or other agencies that were contacted involving the shooter.
No, I think that's absolutely right, Pete, that there is going to be some repercussions as it relates to that. I've got to say, just from my perception of what needs to happen on this issue as it relates to schools, we need to focus on, just like we do at airports almost, buttressing schools across the country with a protocol that is delineated. It may even be a federal protocol, although I'd prefer it to be local, but it needs to have at least a floor of safety in each and every school in order to protect our kids. And that is where the answer is. It may not necessarily be in eliminating the Second Amendment.
No, you're right, Andy, and I agree with you. Now, look at, since Columbine, for example, look what we've done in our schools. We've got school resource officers in most of the schools, or at least the independent school districts that want them. Anybody can go around a school, and there'll be a number on the outside of the window indicating the room number for that particular classroom. And so there's things like that can give law enforcement the ability to readily identify where that threat is coming from, so they can get there as fast as they can. And the fact of the matter is, we're also telling our students that you need to, if somebody's making some threats or going to shoot up the school system, we have to act. And the bottom line is, it appears there was failure here. And it appears that this guy had it in his mind that he was going to push enough carnage in the short amount of time that he possibly could. The safety of our schools is paramount.
Well, and along those lines, Pete, I wonder if we shouldn't just require armed security, at least one, or maybe it's per capita number or percentage of armed security in each school who is on site there to make sure that they're able to respond immediately, as quickly as police are going to be able to get there. They may or may not be able to get in the building, depending on who is taking the action, but armed security being on site may not only be able to respond quicker, but may end up being a deterrent. So I appreciate your thoughts, Pete, on this subject, and a hard-nosed response certainly is necessary. I want to shift your attention for a minute. Pete Stauber, 8th Congressional District candidate as a Republican, with Rick Nolan now not running. It is an open seat and could turn red. Pete, would you say that you are a Trump guy or not a Trump guy?
I've been asked that before, Andy. I did vote for President Trump, and when he has puts legislation or ideas that help our 8th district, I'm all in. I'm fully supportive of him. And those issues or legislation that he would bring forward that don't help my constituents up here in the 8th, I will fight to change the legislation, or at least be a big seat at the table to say this is not good for the District 8 of Minnesota, and here's why. And so I support President Trump.
What did you think about the tax reform bill? Supportive of that?
Absolutely.
All right. And what about the regulatory rollbacks that Trump has, I think, unprecedentedly rolled back regulation that had been put in place by Barack Obama? What do you think of that?
Well, Andy, when you talk to the small businesses and the regulations that have been put forth over the number of years by unelected Washington bureaucrats, it's unconscionable. And what President Trump is doing is he wants to cut through all the red tape. And rather than having to go through 5 or 6 agencies to maybe expand your business or what have you. I'm fully supportive of stopping the redundancy in Washington and forcing it upon the states and the local communities. I don't think Washington should be doing that, and that's one of the things I'm going to really get involved in is the redundancy and the forcing of these regulations, rules and regulations. I've said I want.
Pete, are you able to stay with us on the other side of this break?
Oh, for sure, Andy.
Oh, great.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to talk more with Pete Stauber, congressional candidate for the 8th Congressional District as a Republican. Give us a call in the meantime at 651-289-4488 if we have time. We'll put you on the air with Pete Stauber. Stay with us.
AM 1280, The Patriot.
How can you protect your company's most valuable proprietary information? This is Andrew Parker of the Parker Daniels Keyboard Law Firm. We recently represented a local manufacturing company in an employment lawsuit. Our client learned that a longtime employee was leaving the company to join a direct competitor. The employee intended to help the competitor develop an automated manufacturing system that was a copy of our client's system. The employee did not have a non-compete agreement with our client. We nonetheless filed suit and brought an immediate motion to prevent the employee from beginning work with the competing company. We won, and the employee was prohibited from working for the competitor. Parker Daniels Keyboard's attorneys have been advising companies on employment law matters for decades, and if you find yourself in court, our attorneys are some of the toughest and most experienced employment trial lawyers around. For wise counsel and winning results, contact us at Parker Daniels Keyboard. Go to parkerdk.com. Yes, it is the Justice Hour, Sunday 4 to 5, and we are talking with Pete Stauber on the Justice Hour. I play Stars and Stripes by the Empire Brass Quintet, a great version, I think, of Stars and Stripes. Not because Don John Trump is on the show. No, that might be more appropriate, playing Stars and Stripes. But Pete Stauber's on the show, and we're talking about Donald Trump and some of his policies. Give us a call to ask Pete a question if you like. If we have time, which we don't have much left, but if we have time, we'll put you on 651-289-4488. And go to parkerdk.com as you listen to our continuing discussion with the 8th Congressional District candidate for the Republicans, Pete Stauber, trying to take the seat that Rick Nolan has held for the last many years and who is retiring. Pete, before the break, we were talking briefly about the regulatory rollbacks by President Donald Trump. And, up there in the 8th, regulation and the government getting in the way of business, especially through various environmental measures, but, and oftentimes unnecessary environmental measures, although many are necessary. It is when they get in the way with environmental measures that simply go beyond any reason or rationale that it really can affect industry up there in the northeast of Minnesota. So how are these regulatory rollbacks helping up there, and how is that going to affect the campaign for the 8th District congressional seat?
Well, that's one of the issues I'm running on, Andy, is the regulations are just killing our businesses and the manufacturers, and it really is an impediment to people, the entrepreneurial that wants to get in to small business or manufacturing. You talk about regulations, the Polymet project at the old LTV steel plant up here was it currently is in its 14th year, and just last week the final draft permits, the mining draft permits, were put out for public comment. That's 14 years. The corporation has spent upwards of $300 million trying to produce an environment, trying to show the NPC and the DNR and the
That's
like.
crazy. 14 years the government's gotten in the way, driven them out of business.
Yeah. And like you said we do need to watch our environment, and there ought to be, and we demand environmental standards. But what's happening is there's regulations over regulations over regulations.
And that costs people jobs, I got to believe, Pete.
Well, Andy, the University of Minnesota Duluth did a study on the Polymet project. And for your listeners, that's the precious metals mining, the open pit precious metals mining in what we call the Duluth complex. It's probably going to be said very shortly that is the biggest precious metals find in the world. And so what's happening is the University of Minnesota did a study up here in Duluth that said that project at a minimum will bring $500 million of economic activity for a minimum of 20 years. And we know that, and I've said that a good paying job equals a family. And people want to stay up here in northeastern Minnesota. They're born and raised up here, and we have good manufacturing jobs. We want good mining jobs. And the fact of the matter is, for 14 years, Polymet has just pushed forward, met every regulation, and I believe very soon they'll be mining precious metals up here, which will be a big boom to our economy.
Well, that's got to be priority number one.
It is. The whole priority for the district, Andy, is jobs in the economy.
Right.
And that's why the tax cuts, we know that the tax cuts will help 90% of Americans. And right here in the 8th District, the median tax cuts of all households in the district, they'll be saving $1,733 a year. And we are blue-collar conservatives up here, and that's a lot of money to us.
Not like Hillary Clinton says.
No,
crumbs.
Nancy Pelosi said it was crumbs.
Oh, yeah, Nancy Pelosi, you're right.
Might be crumbs in San Francisco or New York, but not in Ely or North Branch, I can tell you that much.
No, not at all. So, it is Donald Trump country up there, although a lot of the voters would split their vote, and without Trump on the ballot, it's going to be a tough fight, even with Rick Nolan out. What are you hearing on the other side there for the Democrats in terms of who may be running against you, Pete, and how do you size up the race?
Well, first of all, I'm not taking anything for granted. It's an open seat now, and we are laser focused. We are focused on what our game plan is. Our ground game is second to none. We're having volunteers calling every single day to sign up. They want to change, and they know that I am a very good candidate. So as far as the other side, though, Andy, I can't tell you who's going to come out. I know there's been 3 or 4 or 5 people that have come out, but I don't know much about them. One has never been elected, so I don't have a record, or they don't have a record for me to review. But my record's out there as a county commissioner. A year ago in November, I won with 78% of the votes, which is the highest in the entire state, with the exception of the city of Minneapolis. And so we have broad support, and we're getting endorsements. Leader Gazelka endorsed me just last week, and every state senator, every Republican state senator that touches the 8th District has endorsed me.
Outstanding.
And I'm very, very, very proud of that. And we're getting more endorsements. We're getting mayoral endorsements throughout the district, and they'll be put out on press releases soon. But it is it's an opportunity, I think, to really change, and we have a very, very good shot at it with the campaign team and our message. I mean, our message is that common sense conservative message that resonates up here in the 8th District, with Trump winning our district by 16%. In fact, the intensity for President Trump is as good now, if not better, than on Election Day.
Well, it's absolutely outstanding to hear, Pete, and keep up the good work. Keep up the hard work. I know nobody is going to outwork you up there in the 8th, and I just wish you the best. I think we have a real shot of getting a conservative voice up in the 8th Congressional District for one of the few times in the last 50 years with Pete
Yep.
Stauber. Pete, thank you very much for joining us on the Justice Hour this Sunday.
You betcha, Andy. Anytime. Have a safe rest of your weekend.
Thank you very much, Pete. That's Pete Stauber, Republican candidate for the 8th Congressional District, northeastern Minnesota. And, boy, good luck to Pete up there. I know he's working real hard, and any support you can give him, you ought.